How's everybody doing today? It is June, well, this will be coming out June 9th, Tuesday, 2020. That's a very weird way to read the date, but I did it. And welcome to the Chase Carter Concept Podcast. Here we go. How's everybody doing today? I hope this podcast finds the 2 to 3 people who listen to it very well and happy. Got a lot of stuff going on. Last podcast I talked about the civil unrest in the country, and then some more important things like video games and sports, basketball specifically. If that offends you, I'm obviously joking. Today I want to look at everything from what do they call it? The 30,000 foot view, and try to see everything, because I see a lot of people talk about systemic racism, and then I see a lot of people say that that's not real. It's not true. The other side says point to a law that exists today that is within itself racist. So then that must mean there is no systemic racism, or systemic racism like an underlying thing. It's like an unspoken rule, like, hey, we give these people a certain break, we don't give these people a certain break. I watched a thing, John Oliver talking about his anti-police viewpoint, and it was this 30-minute video about all these wrongdoings, and he said something about Trump, how Trump used George Floyd's name when saying he must, about the jobs, about something along those lines. About he used George Floyd's name completely out of context, because I watched the actual interview, and he was talking about, crap, what was he talking about? My mind is terrible. I just watched it 10 minutes ago, and I can't remember. But he used things out of context. So then, like, everything that he said I was agreeing with, I was like, geez, he said that? And then he brought up these statistics. Black people are 7 times more likely to have a violent assault against them from police. I'm like, Jesus. Like, he couldn't be just pulling these statistics out of his ass. These have to be vetted and true. And then I watched another video that debunked those things that he was saying. And he was saying, he's like, those statistics were true, but that, what was it? That the black community is 16% of the population, and they commit 54% of the violent crimes in our country. And so they're more likely, which I don't really understand this, they're more likely to have a hostile interaction. The people committing the violent crimes are more likely to have a violent encounter with the police. And then I forget, some guy, another video I was watching saying, is the NBA racist because there are more African Americans getting technical fouls in the NBA than white Americans in the NBA? And I was like, well, I see it that way. That makes sense. So, but then you hear all of these people's interact, not necessarily like a recorded, because you have to remember that there's not every interaction with the police is recorded, or so you can have all of these police officers just harassing black people, but it doesn't escalate into anything. It's just get out of the car, they pull a gun on you, they treat you like shit, and then they let you go. Just as maybe like a constant reminder. One of my friends released a video. He was being interviewed by a professor. His name is Michael Stewart. His street ball name is Air Dog. I'm not calling him that. I'm not calling anyway. He tried to get everyone to call him Air Dog. I'm not. It's like, your name is Michael. Your name's Michael Stewart. But he was talking about his terrible interactions with the police, one or two instances. And I'm guessing there has to be more. But it was just real interesting hearing him talk about this, and I bet you that wasn't cataloged. That is in no statistics. They just treated him like shit, and let him go. And I heard another friend, I don't want to say his name because he didn't talk about his, what was it, his issue with the cops and his experiences with the police. He would talk about the police just picking him up and taking him for a ride in the back, like interrogating him, talking to him, basically being assholes, like kind of scaring him, and then just letting him go. And there's no record of this happening. So there's these little incidences that I'm like, where people are saying, I'm the victim, and they say these extreme circumstances. There's, like you being black in a bank, and then the teller calling the police on you just because you're black. And then in my head, I'm thinking, well, what did he look like that person could see an article of clothes, whether that's right. That's not right at all. But the way you're dressed, if I'm a white kid, say I'm a white kid in a school with a trench coat, what are you you're immediately going to go to school shootings. Now, maybe it's just rainy weather, but people have ruined, I guess, like a article of clothing. So you relate what they're wearing with who they are, and that's not right. Just how a person in a suit can be an absolute asshole, could be a child molester, could be a murderer, but you don't relate. You relate suit to successful, has money, business. That's what people do. So people, I think, when they judge you on your clothes and how you dress, they instantly just go to racism. And I don't think that's necessarily correct in all cases, but it's safe to say it is. But I don't think so, because if there was a football player, I think I talked about it in my last podcast. He said a restaurant wouldn't let him in because he was wearing a hat. And then he said, well, you know what all that really means, what that really, really means. I'm like, no, you just take the hat off. If you took the hat off and then they were like, yeah, your shoes. And then you change your shoes and it's like, yeah, okay, change your shirt. We need you to wear a collared shirt. You come back with a collared shirt. And then it's like, well, it has to be something else. It's a dress code. It's a dress code. Everybody, now if you look in there and there's all white people in hats, then yes, that's racism. But it's just because you have a hat on that. But so I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think people search for racism. If you're always looking, if that's your immediate reaction to everything, I think that's all you're going to see in a lot of circumstances and issues. So, and I know communications with two people, even if you're in front of each other, you can say something, it can be taken the complete wrong way. And so I don't know, because I'm trying to listen to both sides of the argument. And do we need like police complete overhaul? I don't think so, but I'm not in the system. I'm not a police officer. I'm also not a minority. I have cop friends who talk about they talk about how like difficult their job is, but they don't really get too into it. And I'm not gonna bring it up because that's like a sensitive issue. I'm not, if they dealt with some kind of trauma in their life. My brother, speaking of trauma, my brother's a firefighter, talked about getting this call out to these, it was like a little kid, 10 years, I forget, he was no less than, I think, 13 years old. He'd hung himself. And experiencing that, and he applied CPR to him and everything, he said it, like, how could that not bother you? So like these traumatic events. That's why I'll never ask a cop or a firefighter or an EMT or a nurse or a doctor, how'd your day go? Anyone in the military, like, how did your day go today? Oh yeah, I dealt with all this traumatizing stuff. Let me talk about it. But maybe and on the other side, maybe they should talk about it because that will help them deal with the trauma. But I'm more like close it off, don't think about it, and kind of move on with your day. Experience other happy events. I was going to say experience other happy experiences, and I'm just a dumbass. But yeah, I see all these black rights activists talk about how their communities are being held down, but they don't point to a law that currently exists. They point to laws that exist in the past. And that doesn't mean that those laws don't have effects today, which they obviously do. We're still feeling them today. But there's no current law that they're pointing to. They're pointing to past laws. That's what the other side says. So I'm seeing that, and I'm like, well, if you feel like you're a victim, like, but you have, I don't know, like, it's just extremely weird to wrap your head around. And then there's, and all of those, the black activists that I see anyway, are on the left. And then the black activists that are on the right, they're talking about that there is no systemic racism. There's a girl I watch, what was her name? I want to say Candace Parker, but that's Candace Owens. Candace Parker is a extremely good basketball player. But yeah, I think her name's Candace Owens, and then I was watching all of these videos about these black actors talking about there is no systemic racism. Morgan Freeman was talking about that. Denzel Washington was talking about it. The guy who is Falcon in the Avengers movie was talking about it. And they were talking about how it's not just a race issue in our country, it's a cultural issue, because from where they're from, they don't have a two-parent home. And if you don't have a two-parent home, you're less likely to succeed. So the whole race issue, if you just look at it as a race issue, what they're talking, I'm trying to understand, if they're talking about it's a race issue, then why can't it be a two-parent home privilege instead of a white privilege? So I'm sitting here looking at it, and then there's also studies. They studied two black communities that lived next to each other. I can't remember who the guy's name was. Good job, Chase. Can't remember, but they did a study. It was like West African immigrants that came here, and then next to their neighborhood, for some reason they group them up in. But I guess people who are alike tend to gravitate towards one another. Which is still, like, it's a very interesting human trait that we do. We see people who look alike and act alike, and then we group up with them. But so they studied this West African immigrants in the neighborhood, and in the neighborhood right next door, there was just, I don't know what you call it, just African American people who were from here, and the West African immigrants, they were like a huge percentage higher, more likely to have successful jobs, make money, not have bad interactions with the police. Crime was down in those communities, and I forget his name. I'll look it up here while I'm talking about it. But he was saying that if race was the issue, then they would have equal disparities. They would have if the issues was just race, they would have equal disparity. They would make the same amount of money. They would have the same interaction with the police. But it's a cultural thing. It's their families. It's their attitudes. It's all of these other variables and factors. Race can be a factor. Of course, it's a factor, but it's not just racism. So it's an interesting. But then again, do they make those arguments to belittle the race issues in America? Because if you make those issues, well, then you have to fix all the other issues before you fix the race issue. And why should you fix a certain issue over another one? So it's this weird argument that I could see people are like, yes, systemic racism. And then I see people being racist. And then I'm thinking, well, say that guy's a bank manager. Of course he's going to act like that towards a black customer. Of course he is. He's not going to be like, oh, no, this black, no. Of course he's going to act the same racist way that I saw him in private. He's going to act that way. He's not going to make it known because he wants to keep his job. But then there's people saying there's no law. There is no, until there's evidence, until you show me evidence, that doesn't mean that it didn't exist. Well, you can commit a crime and have none of the evidence there, but the crime still happened. So that's another, I don't know, I just thought of that just now, the whole crime analogy. So there's all these different analogies you can use to back up a person's argument. And I think it's obviously a good thing that we're talking about this, and so we can try to stamp out, even if we can't. Obviously, we're not going to stamp out racism. Just how we're not going to stamp out murderers or pedophiles. There's going to be shitty people with stupid beliefs. That's just, I think, math, and also mental. I think these people have mental problems. I think if you're white and you think you're better than black people, I think you have like an actual learning disability. Because every person I looked up to, every great person that I saw was black. My first hero was Michael Jordan. I'm just amazed. And everyone who was good at basketball, of course I love basketball, I wasn't a Boston Celtics fan because Larry Bird was white. I was just the best player in the world, the person that, I don't know, captured my imagination was a black person. And then you can look at almost anything, they're better. So how can you music better? The most famous scientist in America right now, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's an astrophysicist. He grew up in Brooklyn. Music, Michael Jackson, best dancer, Michael Jackson, Usher. You can list all of these people who just dominate. Their best female artists of all time. You can Beyonce. You can just look at all these people and go, oh, they're just better at everything. Like, how can you look at like the most physical sports that we have, basketball, football, most athletic basketball, and just see what kind of people dominate that sport, what race dominates, and then say that you're better. I don't get it. Golf was strictly, all these sports were white people. And then they were like, hey, we should probably get the people that are better playing because we want to win. And at first, basketball, they would only let one black guy on the team. So the whole world was fighting. Say quote, there wasn't 30 teams, but in the NBA there's 30 teams. But back then there wasn't. They would only let one black person on the team, and then it became like more integrated. But could you imagine like 30 teams looking at the 30 best black players and well, I just him. One's enough. I mean, that's it. I mean, of course, they were. I don't know. I want to try to stay on topic with the. I just don't understand how you can see black people and see them as less than yourself when there's evidence in every society that they're equal or better than us. They're just better at things. Maybe they're just better at things that we hold deep. Because like nobody gives a damn about cricket. They're tennis. The best female players are the Serena sisters, or the Serena sisters, the Williams sisters, Serena Williams and Venus Williams. The male, I don't think there's. I think the male tennis is overseas. They're like European or. What's Nadal from? Can't remember. French. I think he's from France. French clay. He's good on clay. That's all I remember. I don't watch too much tennis, but clay. He's really good on clay. Baseball, you can kind of say before there was more black players coming in, but now more black players are going elsewhere. They're not playing baseball as much. There's more people from Cuba going to baseball. There's different. Like they're more like Mexico type, more Spanish, and then white Americans. But it's just real interesting to see because it's a whole argument because there's a difference between cultures. Is that a race thing or is that just a cultural thing? Like different cultures hold things more dear. Listening to Joe Coy talk about his upbringing and his family, and that's completely different than someone of another nationality is going to feel. Some who's the guy? He's a UFC champion at 155. Yeah, 155. Khabib Nurmagomedov. He still lives with his parents because that's his culture. You take care of your parents. You live in your parents' house. You take care of them until they die, and they move out. And I don't know. Like, can that explain all the differences between the races? Why certain races hold certain jobs more credible than others. It's cooler to be this other than this, and that's just how you get brought up. I don't know. What you're around, what you experience, is that, and of course that's going to drive you to do other things. But say if you're, you rebel, say if you're a rebellious person, and everyone around you is being, I don't know, like in Wall Street, like successful, and you're a rebellious person, are you going to go to the hippie and money doesn't matter type thing? Just because you don't like what's around you? I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. But we are 20 minutes in, and I want to switch topics here. We do need to get rid. Obviously, it goes without saying. Yeah, we need to get racism out of, or stamp it out wherever we see it in this country. To say we need to get rid of racism is a goal. It's not a real goal, because it's not. It's always going to exist. Just like how there's going to be assholes that exist. I don't think so. I think they're mentally ill. I honestly want to go back to that. I think people who believe in these things are mentally ill. There's a connection in their brain that's not firing. Some kind of sympathy or empathy kind of trait that isn't happening. But anyways, I want to talk about Assassin's Creed Origins, a small issue. This is going to be less than 3 minutes, so bear with me on this old game that nobody cares about. They send you off on these captive missions where you have to rescue people who've been captured. And sorry, I dropped my watch. Hopefully, it didn't scare anybody. Assassin's Creed Origins, they send you to get these prisoners, and they're always in the same exact wood cages that they have these like it's just. Imagine like a jail cell bars, but these bars have enough space so these people can actually just scoot out of them. So that doesn't make any sense. But you kill all their guards, let's say, and then you open the door, and they just lay there, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm too weak to run. I'm too weak to. I need help." So you have to carry them. You pick them up on your shoulders like Brock Lesnar. And you just fireman's carry them, all the way out of the base. And then there's a little prompt that says drop prisoner on the ground. So you lay them on the ground, and then you have this conversation with the person who's laying down on the ground. So you're standing straight up, and some guy's like laying down and he's holding his stomach, and he's having a normal conversation with you. He's not going, "Oh, I need to go here." He's just talking to you like this. He was like, "Yeah, I was in prison, and it sucked. I was tortured. It really hurts. I couldn't walk a second ago." And then maybe they give you another task. They're like, "My friend Gory is stuck on the other side of town. Go help him." Then you'll say, "Okay." And then that guy will get right up and run off. And I'm not talking about like walk gingerly, limp. I'm talking about sprint like Usain Bolt, another person that shows that white supremacy is not real. That is real. People believe it. But that the whole concept is not true, that we're better. Fastest man in the world. I think all like the past 10 of them are black. I was going to say African American. That's racist that you assume Usain Bolt is. I'm sorry. But yeah, they just run off. So it doesn't make any. Just these little details I don't get in video games when people are playing these games, and they're spending so much. So they're spending a ton of resources on these games, and it's not like they're small games. Assassin's Creed is one of the biggest franchises in video games, and they're not. They're just missing the mark on a lot of these things. Oh, and another about what's going on in the world. Drew Brees was asked about kneeling, about his teammates kneeling, his fellow players kneeling, and then he went straight to a disrespect. Like when it was showing the interviewer, he asked about the kneeling, and then it went right when it cut back to Drew. Drew's like one of his first words was "I'll never disrespect the flag." And I'm like, that's a really weird, because the interviewer didn't say anything about disrespecting. the flag. He mentioned kneeling. And then if that interview was done how it was shown, because I don't believe, which is insane about the news today, I don't even believe a live footage interview. But then Drew Brees was talked about disrespecting the flag. And I'm like, well, if you thought that kneeling was disrespecting the flag, then why did you do it? There are pictures of you kneeling. So that didn't make any sense to me. And nobody picked up on that. So if you were so against kneeling and you thought it was disrespectful now, but you knelt back then. So the only way I can think of is that you knelt back then because you believed in what your fellow teammates were talking about. And then somebody changed your mind now, and now you think it's disrespectful? That's the only kind of thing I can see. But you didn't think it was disrespectful back then. So, and it's not about disrespecting the flag, which is interesting. And then this whole other argument that people don't want to see you protest, athletes protest. They want to get away. Sports are an escape from reality and all the terrible things. But more people watch sports than the elections and the news and all that stuff. So how can you get this information out to the public other than through the means of their I can't even think their side, the entertainment, because the entertainment society is going to bleed into the different forms of entertainment, whether it be video games, sports, movies, music. All that stuff is gonna, and I think movies and music can do it better because they can reference it more. It can be more of a metaphor. It's not so much in your face. Some of my friends were complaining. They're trying to play Call of Duty, and they're like, this Black Lives Matter thing pops up on my screen. They're like, I don't want to be reminded of all these terrible things going on in the world. I just want to disappear and watch and play video games. And then I'm thinking, well, that's part of the problem. If you can't take, and it's a screen that takes 2 seconds, and you press B and it skips. You don't have to read it. It's not a 5-minute long intro video about the subject. So I think it's those people, but they might be just hiding behind. I mean, their feelings could be real. It's the same thing I heard Bill Burr talk about breast cancer awareness. He bitches about breast cancer awareness. He's like, I just want to watch football. I don't want to be reminded that people are dying of cancer. Can I just watch the game? And then he goes into a whole thing about pink socks and everything. And all this pink shit. And I get his argument about that. But then on the other side, like, where are there's a good cause out there. How can we get more eyeballs on this good cause? And then so the NFL supports breast cancer, but then they didn't support the whole police brutality movement. But now they are, because all of the players are voicing their opinion, which is weird because they didn't voice their opinion back then, but now they're doing it. So it's, I don't know, it's very, very interesting. The Drew Brees thing. I questioned a lot of it. I'm like, this doesn't make sense what he's saying, because he did the opposite. He's saying it's disrespectful, and he did the opposite by kneeling. So what changed? I don't know. So the video game thing, Assassin's Creed Origins, pissed me off that there's none of that. Other little fun facts. I noticed on IGN, they reported that the real-life football matches to use crowd noise from FIFA. So I guess it's a good thing that FIFA went around recording all the ambient noises and chants and stuff like that in soccer arenas. So it's kind of cool that video games are supplying technical fake noise, but that's real noise from past. So it's it's kind of like not a VR experience, but it's not a real experience. I guess you'll be watching soccer, and I'm guessing they won't show the crowd as much, but you'll still be hearing him. So it'll be like this fake. I don't know, fake environmental real sport experience. It's kind of interesting. There was an eccentric multi-millionaire hid $1 million in coins and artifacts in the Rocky Mountains a decade ago and teased the treasure hunters with his name is Forrest Finn. That's a hell of a name. But some rich white guy, bored out of his mind, I guess, and he likes treasure hunts and all that. So he took some of his wealth, gold bars, whatever, and he hid it out in the Rocky in a little chest. And apparently someone found it just recently. So all these people have been searching for over a decade for it. They said hundreds of thousands of people have looked for it. And the one person that found, which is this part, multiple people have died, by the way, searching for it. People have told their family, hey, I'm going to go look for it, and they've never returned. Either they found it and didn't tell anybody and they're on a beach somewhere, or they went out into the forest, into the Rocky Mountains, and died, got attacked by a bear or whatever. And they also asked him, do you feel guilty that people have died about it? And he says, yeah, of course I do, obviously. But he can't be held responsible for someone not taking the proper precautions, not learning about the outdoors. Now, of course, accidents are going to happen. That's like saying the person who invented boxing or the person who invented rock climbing with all the gear. Do you feel bad that people die rock climbing? It's like it's not their accidents. Nothing is 100% safe, so you can't. Which is an interesting kind of article. Someone found it, and in this day and age, where everyone says people do things for recognition and celebrity and all that, this person, mainly probably because he wants to avoid tax purposes, this is what I think, he's not announcing who found the treasure. He wants to be anonymous. So this guy's keeping 100% of all of that. Good for him. Because the government will probably figure out a way to take half of that money. That's another thing I don't understand. The government takes basically half. If you're extremely rich, they take half of your money. You earn $100 million. You didn't really earn $100 million. It's like $45 million you get to take home. Granted, that's still a lot of money. But if at that level, how can you justify if someone is worth that much money taking all of that money from them? It's insane. And then there's another article that scared the hell out of me. It shows this shark in this murky reddish water, right? And it says sharks have been discovered living inside an active volcano. Blew my mind. I'm just reading the headlines here because that's what most people do anyway. Got to get my Xbox fixed. Yep. Well, not my Xbox, my friend Ray's Xbox. He gave me another Xbox. I'm so happy. But yeah, I think that's all the little news stories. Basketball's coming back. I'm excited about that. Haven't heard too much about football. Kind of don't care about that. I just want basketball in the playoffs to happen. Then it's going to be interesting to see how they start next season, if they're going to start around Christmas time, have a shortened season, or if they're just going to, from now on, start basketball on Christmas and then go longer. Because I heard some podcasters talk about that that gets them out of way of competing with football so they can have their own season. I mean, I don't know what's better for as far as ratings go and when people are home, when to get more eyes on the sport than normal. So, but anyways, I think that's it. I hope you guys like the podcast. I recorded this with a different mic, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better. It's an older mic, but a more expensive mic, I guess. So we'll see how this goes, I guess. Yeah, but again, this has been the Chase Carter Concept Podcast. I am your host, Chase Carter, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. You guys have a good one.